What else are we going to talk about today? Oh, the Musk and Trump. Okay, can we just start off the stream with this? The Elon Musk Trump Oval Office press conference. Like, legitimately. What I'm curious about is what's going to happen when Donald Trump's popularity falls. I don't know if you guys saw, but inflation was ticking up again. Ticked up to 0.5% in January, back up to 3% annually. Claudia has recently been going hard about the cartels in Mexico have weapons specifically used by the U.S. military. Why is that? Who is selling them? I love her. Yeah, she's great. I adore Claudia. I literally do. I don't simp for people much, but she's simp worthy in the sense of like, yeah, we gotta defend Claudia. And then finally, just conservatives will believe anything. Like, conservatives will believe anything you tell them. It's crazy. All right, so let's watch this shit and just start malding, because I feel like this is the best way to get going. I'm able to get dual citizenship for Mexico. Should I do it? My feeling is that it is wise to have an escape plan. I saw someone refer to this admin as the Booger Reich. I think Hassan's Burger Reich is a good plan.
Yeah, at a high level, if you say what is the goal of Doge and I think a significant part of the presidency is to restore democracy. This may seem like, well, aren't we in a democracy? Well,
Donald Trump hates children. Can we just pause for a second? Donald Trump hates children. Like, this child starts babbling, and Donald Trump doesn't even pretend to be like, oh, that's cute. He's just like, shut up, kid. He really is Satan incarnate, dude.
If you don't have a feedback loop, okay, we would have to, if you sorry. So, tell you, gravitas can be difficult sometimes. If there's not a good feedback loop from the people to the
how the fuck do we have this nerd fucking loser as the richest man in the world? Like, no system that produces Elon Musk as the richest man in the world is a sentient system. It has no, like, Tesla is falling off. How is he rich? How is he this fucking rich? It's crazy.
Government. And if you have rule of the bureaucrat, if the bureaucracy is in charge, and then what meaning does democracy actually have? If the people cannot vote and have their will be decided by their elected representatives in the form of the president and the Senate and the House, then we don't live in a democracy, we live in a bureaucracy. So it's incredibly important that we close that feedback loop, we fix that feedback loop, and that the public's elected representatives, the president, the House, and the Senate, decide what happens, as opposed to a large, unelected bureaucracy. This is not to say that there are good people who are in the federal bureaucracy, but you can't have an autonomous federal bureaucracy. You have to have one that is responsive to the people. That's the whole point of a democracy. And if you looked at if you looked at the founders today and said, what do you think of the way things have turned out? Well, we have this unelected, fourth unconstitutional branch of government, which is the bureaucracy, which has, in a lot of ways, currently more power than any elected representative. And this is not something that people want, and it's not. It does not match the will of the people. So it's just something we've got to fix. And we've also got to address the deficit. So we've got a $2 trillion deficit, and if we don't do something about this deficit, the country's going bankrupt. I mean, it's really astounding that the interest payments alone on the national debt exceed the Defense Department budget, which is shocking because we spend a lot of money on defense. But if that just keeps going, we're essentially going to bankrupt the country. So what I really want to say is, like, it's not optional for us to reduce the federal expenses. It's essential. It's essential for America to remain solvent as a country, and it's essential for America to have the resources necessary to provide things to its citizens and not simply be servicing vast amounts of debt.
And also, could you mention some of the things that your team has found, some of the crazy numbers, including the woman that walked away with about 30 million,
right,
et cetera?
Well, we do find it sort of rather odd that there are quite a few.
Okay, I want to pause it for a second and say something surprising, which is the American government is a scam, and it's totally ineffective, and it is full of graft, and it is just idiotic and wasteful, and it's not because government can't work. It's because the way the Democrats and Republicans have designed the systems is to make them as ineffective as possible. Like, there's no doubt about that America's system of government at the state, local, and federal level is trash. Just look at California. California, they have hundreds of billions of dollars and they accomplish nothing with it. I mean, that's just true.
People in the bureaucracy who.
This is why you don't have like a 3 or 4 year old at the White House. They should be like socializing with other children and like learning social skills. And like, I find the way that Elon Musk uses his children as like props to be fucking weird.
Have ostensibly a salary of a few $100,000, but somehow manage to accrue tens of millions of dollars in net worth while they are in that position, which is, what happened at USAID. We're just curious as to where it came from. Maybe they're very good at investing, in which case we should take their investment advice, perhaps. But just there seems to be mysteriously they get wealthy. We don't know why. Where does it come from? And I think the reality is that they're getting wealthy at the taxpayer expense. That's the honest truth of it. So, we're looking at, say, if you look at, say Treasury, for example, basic controls that should be in place, that are in place in any company, such as making sure that any given payment has a payment categorization code, that there is a comment field that describes the payment, and that if a payment is on the do not pay list, that you don't actually pay it. None of those things are true currently. So the reason that departments can't pass audits is because the payments don't have a categorization code. It's like just a massive number of blank checks just flying out the building. So you can't reconcile blank checks. You've got comment fields that are also blank, so you don't know why the payment was made. And then we've got this truly absurd, a do not pay list, which can take up to a year for an organization to get on a do not pay list. And this, we're talking about terrorist organizations, we're talking about known fraudsters, known aspects of waste, known things that do not match any congressional appropriation, can take up to a year to get on the list. And even once on the list is not used. It's mind-blowing. So what we're talking about here, we're really just talking about adding common sense controls that should be present, that haven't been present. So you say, like, well, how could such a thing arise? That seems crazy. When you understand that.
Oh, I forgot to inform you of this, and I can't find anything other than Jamie Peck's Instagram post, but Luigi accepted the $300,000 they raised for his defense. Elon Musk, like, if you want to know the secret to getting rich, if you really want to become rich, the answer is government contracts. That is the #1 way to get rich in this country. If you see a business and they're like, "We've just been accepted for a cutting edge deal with the Defense Department," that company is going to explode, like every time. The most rich people you know got rich because of some sort of government contract or license or cutout. We're talking about privatized utilities. We're talking about things like liquor licenses or beer distributorships or car dealerships or boat dealerships. Things like that are how most people get rich. They do not get rich by like starting a successful chain of restaurants. That's like fucking impossible. Okay? Like you could have that's fucking impossible. All right? You get rich by like selling the Pentagon screws that you mark up by 500%. You get rich by finding old surplus ammunition and selling it to the Iraqi army through the DOD at 5,000% markup. You get rich by having some sort of cutout, subsidy, special depreciation law. That's why people get rich in real estate the most. Real estate is the place where you can get wealthy through government support as well. That's why I brought up things like TIFs. Or another example of how you get rich in real estate is a zoning variance. Like if I buy 10 acres of land from you, and it is low density agricultural land, and then I turn that into high density residential without doing anything, I just massively increased the value of the land. And all that happened was a government regulatory change. So many people get rich by they go to farmers, they buy up agricultural land, and then they go to the planning department, and then they get it changed to low density residential, and then they subdivide 500 plots on it, and they build houses on those plots, and they sell them. And the reason why they make big money is not because necessarily the houses are turning a ton of profit, although the houses do turn profit, right? It's because the land, you know, per quarter acre went from, you know, $5,000 a quarter acre to $100,000 a quarter acre. That's how they get rich. And so like that's the real rich people in your community, right? It is not people that are like innovating things. It is people that know how to work the levers of government in order to give themselves special permission that only they can get. So you're saying I need to buy the empty lots close to my house and build mansions on them. I mean, are they? Can you subdivide the land? Are they zoned properly? Do you have the ability to get variances on the traffic? Are you going to get, you know, tax incentives? Like it doesn't pencil out until you could do all those things. $100% acres of farmland near me in Florida went from cattle and blueberries to townhomes, all at a $400K a pop. Yep.
Really, everything is geared towards complaint minimization. So then you understand the motivations. So if people receive money, they don't complain, obviously. But if people don't receive money, they do complain. And the fraudsters complain the loudest and the fastest. So then when you understand that, then it makes sense. Oh, that's why everything they approve all the payments at Treasury. Because if you approve all the payments, you don't get complaints. But now we're saying that, no, actually, we are going to complain. If money is spent badly, if your taxpayer dollars are not spent in a sensible and frugal manner, then that's not okay. Your tax dollars need to be spent wisely on things that matter to the people. I mean, these things, like, it's just common sense. It's not draconian or radical, I think. It's really just saying, let's look at each of these expenditures and say, is this actually in the best interest of the people? And if it is, it's approved. If it's
Funny, watching The Wire with the wife, 4th season, when it's all politics. Last episode had a donor come to a candidate saying, I need that traffic easement or something for the project to be worth it. And here's what we're talking about it now. I mean, of course. That's because I've actually done stuff in local government, man. One of the moments in my career that literally does stick in my craw is the fact that people don't know anything and then they talk about politics for a living. And they get followings. And they don't know shit. And like, I'm nice to a lot of people that I would never watch in a million years just because they don't know shit. And like, I don't know how to, I don't know how to like square that circle. Am I being a hypocrite? Am I being an asshole? It's not that they're wrong about things necessarily. It's just they bring nothing to the table. You know? And it's just like, what's the best way to deal with that? I guess just ignore them. But like, at the end of the day, it's just very frustrating in this space because clout is its own thing, right? Like, if you have a lot of followers, then people will listen to you because you have a lot of followers. But I feel like if you have a lot of followers, you should do some homework. You know, you should like study a little bit, maybe read a little bit. But what ends up happening is people get a lot of followers and then they get arrogant because they have a lot of followers. And they're like, well, then I must be smart. That's me. I bring nothing but my good looks. No, I think you're entertaining, Frost Prime, and I like you. And I think you have good takes. I'm talking about people that I think we all know who I mean. Let's just say short stack goblin. Asmold is a prime example. I mean, Asmongold is Asmongold has a flaw that we all have. I'm going to try to explain the flaw. Maybe it has a name. I don't know, but this is the flaw that we have. So many of us don't really consider who we really are. But we think of ourselves as what we imagine we could be. Does that make sense? Like, we don't really reckon with our self-awareness. We live in this fantasy of progression and improvement, and we think about ourselves as that imagined future that we're progressing toward. And when we have flaws, we think, oh, I'm working on that flaw. That's not who I am. I recognize that as a flaw. I could change it if I wanted to. It's just a lower priority thing right now. We all do that. But for Asmongold, that's his entire life. I don't think Asmongold really sits there and go, wow, I'm surrounded by a rotten room full of trash and vermin. I haven't taken a shower in a month. I'm disgusting. Like, he doesn't think like that. He thinks, oh, I'm doing this for the bit. I could change any time. I could clean this up out of whatever I want to. I could, this is what makes me popular. Right? He doesn't really reckon with the fact that he doesn't have an education. His personal life is in shambles. His health is failing. The conditions around him are uninhabitable and pestilent. He exists in this kind of like bubble of his own hubris and arrogance. And the people around him, because this is the people he wants around him, are parasitic and transactional. Because he has such profound self-loathing he can't experience love. To love others, you must be able to love yourself. You have to see yourself as worthy of love in order to really love another. He can't. He sees himself as worthless and disgusting, and the only thing that he brings value to the table is his audience. So he seeks out people that are openly transactional with him because he feels secure in that transactional relationship. He doesn't feel like he could be blindsided. And so the people he brings around them are sociopathic, social climbing, evil people who want to turn him into a lolcow for money. And it's just like, I don't know how to get him out of that trap. So of course he's going down right-wing politics. When you live a life without love, where you hate yourself, of course you become a conservative. Of course you become somebody who believes in dog-eat-dog world. So of course you believe in hierarchical power and transactional things and the fallen nature of man and all the things that conservatives believe. I said this before, but the foundational belief of conservatism is that there's only so much good to go around, so you need to hoard it for yourself and your people that you love. Right? Like if we tried to go out there and help everybody on this planet, conservatives believe it would make everything worse, actually. Because we would take the good that exists in the world and we'd spread it too thin. That's what they believe. This is a foundational belief of every conservative. That by trying to do good, you will do ill. They all think that. They all believe it fundamentally, and they're all connected to it. Bro, this is not how you build yourself an audience. You're probably like 13 or something. But if you want some real advice on streaming, sometimes people come in here who are very small creators and they're like, how do you have thousands of viewers? How do I build a community? And so I want to help you. If you want to become a content creator, why? That's the question you need to answer. And it has to be a good answer. If your answer is like, I just want to be famous, then you're never going to succeed. You need to have a reason. You need to have a motivation. You need to have something that makes you unique and valuable. Don't just look at other people creating and going, I could do that. That will never work. Anyway, that's the kind of fundamental belief of conservatives, right? Like, there's always so much good to go around.
If it's not, we should think about it. So, there's crazy things like just cursory examination of Social Security, and we've got people in there that are 150 years old. Now, do you know anyone who's 150? I don't. Okay. They should be on the Guinness Book of World Records. They're missing out. That's a case where, like, I think they're probably dead. It's my guess. Or they should be very famous, one of the two. And then there's a whole bunch of Social Security payments where there's no identifying information. Well, like, why is there no identifying information? Obviously, we want to make sure that people who deserve to receive Social Security do receive it. And that they receive it quickly and accurately. I'll tell you another crazy thing. So, one of the things is like we are trying to sort of right-size the federal bureaucracy, just make sure that this, obviously there needs to be a lot of people working for the federal government, but not as many as currently. So we're saying, let's...
By the way, chat, what's really interesting is the federal bureaucracy has been shrinking. The federal employment has been shrinking. As the population increases, the federal government's employ has been shrinking. It's one of the major problems for why we can't get anything done is because we do too much stuff with privatization and contractors. This is legitimately sad. And the reason why this is true is because you're hanging out with Destiny and Aiden Ross. And you're hanging out with evil people. That's sad. I've got a bunch of friends in the streaming industry. That feels bad for you. Casey Tron says another case of I was right. I know it's our burden, Casey Tron. Oh yeah, you want to see? Speaking of Mike was right.
We got to stop that war, and I'm interested primarily.
Did I skip ahead by accident?
There's student debt. The monthly payments drop. They are paid. People to shift from that's what people are going to get. They're going to get what they voted for. So, you know, and the kind of things we're doing are, I think, very, very simple and basic. They're not. We're you know what I mentioned, for example.
How far were we? Chat. Someone look at the VOD while I pull up something else. I accidentally clicked. All right, here's what I want to show you. G. Hire says, is there any political party in the world that hates its own voters more than the Democrats do? And there's something that I wrote last February where I said, when I first started in organizing, my mentor had a saying that they told me would help explain politics for me for the rest of my life. I think it holds up well. It is, Republicans fear their base, Democrats hate their base. And it's always right. It is always right. And here we are a year later, and this... This post is like, the Democrats despise their grassroots groups. Can't spell felon without Elon. Very true. The thing about Elon Musk is that he exploited Reddit liberalism to become a multi-billionaire. But none of those words are in the Bible. Six minutes and 10 seconds, you king.
It's proved. If it's not, we should think about it. So, you know, there's crazy things like just cursory examination of Social Security, and we've got people in there that are 150 years old. Now, do you know anyone that's 150? I don't. Okay.
That's made up. That's not true. Of course, it's a lie.
In today's episode of proof that Elon doesn't know anything at all about software engineering, and that neither do his minions, who are professional software engineers, he claimed in an interview with the press that there are people who are 150 years old that are getting Social Security. So what is the event that happened 150 years ago? It's the meter convention, when the standards, the international standards for different measures were established. Why is that important? If you've ever used Unix systems or written software for them, you will probably know that if you have a date, it is the number of seconds since the Unix epoch. That's the date. And it comes out to, it's this very long number that you can convert to a date that a person can read. So in Unix, if you have a date stored as 0, you will get January 1st, 1970. You'll often see that date in places in apps and software and websites where there's no date. They don't know the date. This is what it will show, because they will just have a 0 for the date, and it converts it to this date, because that's when Unix epoch started. There is another epoch called ISO 8601, and the ISO 8601 epoch is the meter convention 150 years ago. Now, this is the international standard for how to store dates. Social Security uses a language called COBOL, which is a very old language. And COBOL does not have a date type. It doesn't have a time type. It doesn't have any kind of date time type like most languages, most modern languages do. And so you have to store dates as numbers. And one of the formats for dates that is really easy to store as a number is ISO 8601, which stores it in like 4 digits for the year, 2 digits for the month, 2 digits for the date, etc. And you can store any date as a number that way. And this is the international standard way of storing dates. And so that's what people will oftentimes use for systems that are written in languages like COBOL that don't have native date types. And so if you implement a system that way, which is very common for those kinds of systems, and you don't know the date for something, and you have a 0 date, it's going to say 1875. Not because the answer to whatever date you're looking for is 1875, but because there is no value stored. So if they don't know someone's birth date, they don't know the date that something happened, this is what the answer will be. It'll say 1875.
Elon Musk doesn't program. Okay? He hasn't programmed since PayPal. And according to what people say at the time, his code was so terrible that they just ripped it all out. Like, PayPal didn't use any of his code.
They should be on the Guinness Book of World
Mike, didn't you call this? Inside tension, Democrats growing tension with their grassroots. Yeah, we're going to talk about this next.
Records. They're missing out. So
God, every time
that's
Elon
a case
talks,
where like
it's so boring. He's so uncharismatic. It's crazy.
I think they're probably dead. It's my guess. Or they should be very famous, one of the two. And then there's a whole bunch of Social Security payments where there's no identifying information. Well, like, why is there no identifying information? Obviously, we want to make sure that people who deserve to receive Social Security do receive it, and that they receive it quickly and accurately. I'll tell you another crazy thing. So, one of the things is like we are trying to sort of right-size the federal bureaucracy, just make sure that this. Obviously, there need to be a lot of people working for the federal government, but not as many as currently. So we're saying, well, okay, let's if people can retire, with full benefits and everything, that would be good. They can retire, get their retirement payments, everything. And then we were told, this is actually, I think, a great anecdote, because we were told the most number of people that could retire possibly in a month is 10,000. We're like, well, why is that? Well, because all the retirement paperwork is manual on paper. It's manually calculated, then written down on a piece of paper. Then it goes down a mine. And I'm like, what do you mean a mine? Like, yeah, there's a limestone mine where we store all the retirement paperwork. And you look at a picture of this mine. We'll post some pictures afterwards. And this mine looks like something out of the 50s because it was started in 1955. So it looks like it's like a time warp. And then the speed, the limiting factor is the speed at which the mine shaft elevator can move determines how many people can retire from the federal government. And the elevator breaks down sometimes, and then nobody can retire. Doesn't that sound crazy? There's like 1,000 people that work on this. So I think if we can take those people and say, like, you know what, instead of working in a mine shaft and carrying manila envelopes to boxes in a mine shaft, you could do practically anything else, and you would add to the goods and services of the United States in a more useful way. So anyway, so I think that's an example. Like at a high level, if you say, like, how do we increase prosperity? Is we get people to shift from roles that are low to negative productivity to high productivity roles. And so you increase the total output of goods and services, which means that there's a higher standard of living available for everyone. That's the actual goal.
Okay. So, So we're gonna measure standard of living of who? That's a great way of looking at a society. I couldn't agree more. Rawlsians in, yeah. I think that we should measure the worth of a society based on the standard of living of the worst off person. Now, in America, the worst off person is dying on the street right now of multiple untreated diseases. And so that's probably not a good society, right? So it's a philosophy called Maximin. Okay, chat. If you want some cheap, easy social democrat or democratic socialist philosophizing, there's something called Maximin. What's that mean? It means societies ought to maximize the position of the worst off person. Now, if you're like, well, that means you just give $1 billion to every homeless. No, because as soon as they get $1 billion, they're not the worst off person. There's a new worst off person. So just trying to give $1 billion to the worst off person will only last for a few people before you run out of money. And there's going to be a bunch of really bad people in really bad positions. Okay. So what does that mean? So I think it's a worthy goal to measure a society based off of the standard of living of the median person, the average person, the bottom 10% person. And I can tell you right now, America sucks. I kind of am really bored of Elon. Does Trump ever talk? Okay, we're almost at Trump. Jesus Christ.
Everyone's very quiet. Well, so,
How do you feel about eliminating the penny? Good, eliminate the penny. As long as all existing pennies are still good money, I don't care. Pennies are fucking worthless. I remember in 1995 or 6, I was collecting pennies because I was trying to buy Wheel of Time books as in 6th grade. I was like scrounging pennies. And it was fucking worthless. I was born that year, fucking old head, haha. Yeah, of course. It was still, pennies were still worthless then. People wouldn't bend over to pick up a penny in 1995. I think I was trying to buy, it was 1995, so I was like trying to buy Lord of Chaos paperback. Why even have anything lower than a dime as coinage? I mean, nickels are probably needed. Nickels are even more unprofitable. Eliminate them both. I would make the nickel cheaper. We'll have a cheaper material.
people normally this quiet?
Your detractors, Mr. Musk.
I have to what?
Including a lot of Democrats.
I have detractors?
You do, sir.
I don't believe it.
Say that.
Ugh. The mental fragility of the most powerful people on the planet is embarrassing to watch. It is absolutely embarrassing to watch the mental fragility of these fucking children, dude. And if you're like, Mike, he's laughing and joking, then you don't know how to see. That's your autism coming out, chatter. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to tell you it is, because he's shuffling around. He's nervously, he's taking his head off. He's like rubbing his sweat off his brow. He's like, he's nervous. he's hurting. He's stressed. He ain't trolling shit. He's trolled.
You're orchestrating a hostile takeover of government and doing it in a non-transparent way. What's your response to that criticism?
Well, first of all, you couldn't ask for a stronger mandate from the public. The public voted, we have a majority of the public voting for President Trump. We won the House, we won the Senate. The people voted for major government reform. There should be no doubt about that. That was on the campaign. The president spoke about that at every rally. The people voted for major government reform, and that's what people are going to get. They're going to get what they voted for. And a lot of times, people that don't get what they voted for, but in this presidency, they are going to get what they voted for. And that's what democracy is all about.
Mr. Mr. Musk, the White House says that you will identify and excuse yourself from any conflicts of interest that you may have. Does that mean that you are in effect policing yourself? What are the checks and balances that are in place to ensure that there is accountability and transparency?
Well, we actually are trying to be as transparent as possible. In fact, we post our actions to the Doge handle on X and to the Doge website. So all of our actions are maximally transparent. In fact, I don't think there's been, I don't know of a case where an organization has been more transparent than the Doge organization.
Except when you talk about who works for them, in which case you say it's a crime to say who the 19-year-olds saying racial slurs on their social media. That's a crime to talk about those racial slur kids. So I love maximum transparency where the people doing the thing are immediately stopped. Oh, we have a hype train going on, chat. Top sub gifter, top bits owner. Wait, there's a level 111 emote? Yo, Twitch, that's crazy. That's crazy. Like, come on, man. A level 111. Get the fuck out of there.
So, you know, and the kind of things we're doing are, I think, very, very simple and basic. They're not, you know, what I mentioned, for example, about Treasury, just making sure that payments that go out, taxpayer money that goes out, is categorized correctly, that the payment is explained, that organizations on the do not pay list, which takes a lot to get there, that actually are not paid, which currently they are paid. These are not individual judgment decisions. These are about simply having sensible checks and balances in the system itself to ensure that taxpayer money is spent well. So it's got nothing to do with, like, say, a contract with some company of mine at all.
But if there is a conflict of interest when it comes to you yourself, for instance, you've received billions of dollars in federal contracts when it comes to the Pentagon, for instance, which the president, I know, has directed you to look into.
Yeah.
Are you policing yourself in that? Is there any sort of accountability check and balance in place that would provide any transparency for the American people?
Well, all of our actions are fully public. So if you see anything, you say, like, wait a second, hey, Elon, that seems like maybe that's, you know, there's a conflict there. It's not like people are going to be shy about saying that. They'll say it immediately, you know?
Including you yourself.
Yes. But transparency is what builds trust, not simply somebody asserting trust. So not somebody saying they're trustworthy, but transparency, so you can see everything that's going on. And then you can see, am I doing something that benefits one of my companies or not? It's totally obvious.
And if we thought that, we would not let him do that segment or look in that area. If we thought there was a lack of transparency or a conflict of interest. And we watch that also. He's a big businessman. He's a successful guy. That's why we want him doing this. We don't want an unsuccessful guy doing this. Now, one thing also that Elon hasn't really mentioned are the groups of people that are getting some of these payments. They're ridiculous. And we're talking about billions of dollars that we've already found. We found fraud and abuse. I would say those two words as opposed to the third word that I usually use, but in this case, fraud and abuse. It's abusive because most of these things are virtually made up, or certainly money shouldn't be sent to them. And you know what I'm talking about. It's crazy. So, but we're talking about tens of billions of dollars that we've already found. And now a judge who's an activist judge wants to try and stop us from doing this. Why? Why would they want to do that? I campaigned on this. I campaigned on the fact that I said government is corrupt. And it is very corrupt. It's very, very...
And I'm going to show you how corrupt by giving myself a lot of money. I'm not rich like Elon. My family got rich off of owning slums where the rent was paid by the government. Oh, whoops. Did Mike just say that every rich person is really rich because of government contracts? Who knew?
Very, it's also foolish. As an example, a man has a contract for 3 months and the contract ends, but they keep paying him for the next 20 years, you know, because nobody ends a contract. You got a lot of that. You have a contract that's a 3-month contract. Now, normally, if you're in a small, in all fairness, it's the size of this thing is so big.
Yeah.
But if you have a contract and you're in a regular business, you end the contract in 3 months. You know it's a consultant. Here's a contract for 3 months, but it goes on for 20 years. And the guy doesn't say that he got money for 20 years, you know? They don't say it. They just keep getting checks month after month. And you have various things like that, and even much worse than that, actually, much worse. And I guess you call that incompetence, maybe.
Yeah.
It could be corruption. It could be a deals made on both sides, you know, where the guy gets the money, he kicks. I think there's a lot of kickback here. I see a lot of kickback here.
There's a lot of kickbacks.
A tremendous kickback, because nobody could be so stupid to give out some of these contracts.
Yes.
So he has to get a kickback. So that's what I got elected for, that and borders and military and a lot of things, but this is a big part of it. And I hope that the court system is going to allow us to do what we have to do. We got elected to among other things, find all of this fraud, abuse, all of this horrible stuff going on. And we've already found billions of dollars, not like a little bit, billions, many billions of dollars. And when you get down to it, it's going to be probably close to $1 trillion. It could be close to $1 trillion that we're going to find. That will have quite an impact on the budget. And you'll go to a judge where they handpick a judge, and he has certain leanings. I'm not knocking anybody for that, but he has certain leanings. And he wants us to stop looking. How do you stop looking? I mean, we've already found it. We have a case in New York where a hotel has paid $59 million, $59 million because it's housing migrants, illegal migrants, all illegal, I believe.
And they were being paid twice the normal room rate at 100% occupancy.
Unbelievable.
So it's a racket.
Yeah.
Mr. Musk, can I ask a question? You
Well,
said
if I may sort of just going for the president's comments, at a
By the way, I mean, like, even if that's true, which it almost certainly is, it is graft. There's no doubt about that. And the thing is, people will, and even if it's not true, even if they're lying, the reality is, why doesn't the government have public housing? Why don't we have a whole a backlog of high quality available public housing for people to live in? Why is there no social public housing available in this country? Why do we have a 6 million housing unit shortage in the United States? That's probably even more acute than that if people could actually move to where they want to move. Like, the reason why America sucks now is it's unaffordable to get a house. The only place where it's not unaffordable is where there was a boom 50, 70, or 100 years ago, and there's a bunch of old housing that's sitting there vacant because there was an economic depression in that area and people left. Like, that's the only place where it's affordable to live. But if you're talking about, like, the places where economic growth is primarily happening, you can't get a house.
high level, you say, well, what? How?
By the way,
is
he's
that-
a complete fucking moron. Like, everything they say is such bullshit. It's actually shocking how they never bring up real shit. There's a lot of graft in our environment, but they support that. They support it. It's like, it's fucking crazy, man.
Yeah, how do you, what are the two ingredients that are really
Whether I make 20x the minimum wage, I'm not even close to being able to afford a house where I want to live. Yeah.
necessary in order to cut the budget deficit in half from 2
Two
trillion
babies
to 1
froze
trillion?
to death?
And it's really two
Jesus
things.
Christ.
Competence and caring. And if you add competence and caring, you'll cut the budget deficit in half. And I fully expect to be scrutinized and get a daily proctology exam, basically. Might as well just camp out there.
This guy would be inappropriate in the 60s, dude. You're in the fucking Oval Office! Be normal!
So it's not like I think I can get away with something. I'll be scrutinized nonstop. But with the support of the president, we can cut the budget deficit in half from 2 trillion to 1, and then with deregulation, because there's a lot of sort of regulations that don't ultimately serve the public good. We need to free the builders of America to build. And if we do that, that means I think we can get the economic growth to be maybe 3, 4%, maybe 5%. And that means if you can get $1 trillion of economic growth and you cut the budget deficit by $1 trillion, between now and next year, there is no inflation. There's no inflation in 26. And if the government is not borrowing as much, it means that
Wait, so we're aiming for 0% inflation now? Oh! Oh boy! Oh boy! They're trying to crash the economy. Are they actually trying to crash the economy? They're so fucking like, I don't even know if they are at this point.
costs decline. So everyone's, the mortgage, their car payment, their credit card bills, anything, their student debt, the monthly payments drop. That's a fantastic scenario for the average American. I mean, imagine they're going down the grocery aisle and the prices from one year to the next are the same, and their mortgage, all their debt payments dropped. How great is that for the average American?
We had
That's
no
what we're
idea. We had no idea we were going to find this much, and it's open. It's not like complicated. It's
It's not that
simple stuff.
complicated.
It's
It's
like
a lot of work.
We
Yeah.
can't believe it. A lot of work. A lot of smart people involved. Very, very smart people. But you're talking about anywhere maybe $500 billion. It's crazy the kind of numbers you're
is really
talking
crazy.
about. You know, normally when you're looking at something, you'll find you're looking for 1 out of 100. You're almost reversing it. You look for one that's good.
Yeah.
And you can look at the title and you say, why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? And the public gets it. You know, the public gets it. You've seen the polls. The public is saying, why are we paying all this money? This for years, this has gone on.
Mike, if Canada wants to buy PA and it was on the ballot, would you vote yes to join Canada? My feeling about that is that Canada is the one place in the world that may be worse run than the United States. Like, the only reason Canada is in any way like better than the United States is single payer healthcare that you guys are actively trying to dismantle. The UK is another, yeah, I mean, the whole Anglosphere is collapsing, but Canada sucks too. Like, you're about to elect a conservative named Pierre, for fuck's sake. What the fuck are you guys talking about? Like, come on.
Go ahead. Wait, go ahead.
Senator Rand Paul today said that Doge cuts will ultimately need Congress. Do you agree with that? Is that the
I
plan?
really don't know. I know this. We're finding tremendous fraud and tremendous abuse. If I need a vote of Congress to find fraud and abuse, it's fine with me. I think we'll get the vote, although there'll be some people that wouldn't vote. And how could a judge want to hold us back from finding all of this fraud and finding all of this incompetence? Why would that happen? Why would even Congress want to do that? Now, Congress, if we do need a vote, I think we'd get a very easy vote because we have a track record now. We've already found billions of dollars of abuse, incompetence, and corruption. A lot of corruption.
If a judge does block one of your policies, part of your agenda, will you abide by that ruling? Will you comply
Well, I
with that
always
order?
abide by the courts, and then I'll have to appeal it. But then what he's done is he slowed down the momentum. And it gives crooked people more time to cover up the books. You know, if a person's crooked and they get caught, other people see that, and all of a sudden it becomes harder later on. So, yeah, the answer is I always abide by the courts, always abide by them, and will appeal. But appeals take a long time, and I would hope that a judge, if you go into a judge and you show him, here's a corrupt situation, we have a check to be sent, but we found it to be corrupt. Do you want us to send this corrupt check to a person, or do you want us not to give it and give it back to the taxpayer? I would hope a judge would say, don't send it, give it back to the taxpayer.
Yeah, if I can add to that, what we're finding is that a bunch of the fraud is not even going to Americans. So I think we can all agree that if there's going to be fraud, it should at least go to Americans. But a bunch of the fraud rings that are operating in the United States and taking advantage of the federal government, especially in the entitlements programs, are actually foreign fraud rings. They're operating in other countries and actually exporting money to other countries. We should stop that.
Mr. Musk,
And this is big numbers. Talk about $100 to $200 billion a year. Serious money.
Mr. Musk, you said on X
Yeah.
that an example of the fraud that you have cited was $50 million of condoms was sent to Gaza. But after fact check this, apparently Gaza in Mozambique, and the program was to protect them against HIV. So can you correct the statements? It wasn't sent to Hamas actually. It was sent to Mozambique, which makes sense why condoms was sent there.
Yeah.
And how can we make sure that all the statements that you said were correct, so we can trust what you say?
Well, first of all, some of the things that I say will be incorrect and should be corrected. So nobody's going to bat 1,000. I mean, we will make mistakes, but we'll act quickly to correct any mistakes. I'm not sure we should be sending $50 million worth of condoms to anywhere, frankly. I'm not sure that's something Americans would be.
He said sex. Sex. Whoa, he said sex. 50 million is a lot of money, man. Like, this is the level of stupidity of the conservative movement. Like, it's one of those things where it's not only contemptuous, it's kind of like insanely stupid. Like, do I even need to explain why it's stupid? Do I even need to explain it? Why it's infantile? Do I even need to explain why you're a fucking moron? And this is why China will win. Like, legitimately, this is why China will win. The communist-led state capitalism, they are not dumb like this. They're just not. If the Chinese state calculates, we will be able to help the development of Mozambique and increase our parties and our country's positive social connection to Mozambique. We will provide this assistance and condoms to help lower HIV transmission rates, and they'll just do it as from a logical. They'll make a report about this is how we can help Mozambique to increase our, and they'll fucking do it. They won't go like, no, condoms. It's fucking over. There's no shot. We're not even going to be a challenge to China. Like, we're not. The only way the United States of America could challenge China is a thermonuclear strategic all-out strike. We can't win. Our political class is too stupid. Our foreign policy apparatus is too ineffective and racist and hubristic. We have the worst governmental class on the planet. The corruption and stupidity is unbelievable. The media we have are just, it's vacuous bullshit. They're too stupid to hold ideas in their heads. What do these fuckers do all day? It's unbelievable. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's the sooner this empire falls, the better. At this point, like, what could you even say? Oh, wow, you gave $50 million of condoms. Now, I'm sure if you look into it, it's not $50 million of condoms. It's $50 million to set up a, anti-HIV prevention program in Mozambique to save millions of lives. But it gets shortened to $50 million of condoms because that's funny. Major media jobs are pure nepotism and come from upper ruling class to begin with. They have no stake in challenging the status quo. You're 100% correct. That's why they hate me. That's why they hate Hassan. Because, like, those of us who built up by finding an audience and, like, having speaking about things in a coherent way and building our audience up through the efficacy of our predictions and our analysis and our understanding and our entertainment value and all those other fucking things, they hate us. I mean, it's shocking. Like, legitimately, what we have built on Twitch, the viewership we get, compares to projects that literally get hundreds of millions of dollars of investment. I'm a guy with a $50 webcam.
Really excited about. And that is really an enormous number of condoms when you think about it. But you know, if it went to Mozambique instead of Gaza, I'm like, okay, that's not as bad, but still, you know, why are we doing that?
Mr. Musk, can you talk a little bit about how closely you're working with agency heads as you're directing these cuts? Do they have how much input do agency heads have when you're making these decisions?
Yeah, we work closely with the agency heads, yeah. There are sort of checks in place. So it's not just us just going in and doing things willy nilly. It's in partnership with the agency heads, and I check frequently with the president to make sure that this is what the president wants to have happen. So we talk almost every day, and I double check things to make sure, is this something, Mr. President, you want us to do this? Then we'll do it.
USAID has been one of your main targets. Are you concerned at all that some of the cuts or that shutting that agency altogether may lead to diseases?
Total Trumpism victory. Total Trumpian victory. Total Russian victory, honestly. She looks like a comic book villain. She just looks like a comic book villain. Incredible. I'm trying to find the Senate broadcast. They just didn't have it. They didn't broadcast the vote? The Senate has voted 52-48 to confirm Tulsi Gabbard as the what do they even try for Dems are such I mean, you know, they voted against her as a block. So what more can you say? That's crazy. You can't filibuster nominees anymore. They overturned the filibuster for nominees.
Or other bigger problems starting in other countries that then come to the United States?
That happened a while ago.
Yeah, so that's an interesting example. So that's something where we work closely with the State Department and Secretary Rubio. And we have, for example, turned on funding for Ebola prevention and for HIV prevention.
Left that, you said?
Yes, correct. And we are moving fast, so we will make mistakes, but we'll also fix the mistakes very quickly. So,
Do you see it as a worthy cause, USAID?
I think that there are some worthy things, but overall, if you say what was the bang for the buck, I would say it was not very good. And there was far too much of what USAID was doing was influencing elections in ways that I think were dubious and do not stand the light of day.
I mean, just as a follow-up to the Pentagon contracts, if you have received billions of dollars in contracts from the Pentagon, and the president's directing you to look into the Department of Defense, is that
which we
a
definitely need
conflict
to
of
do and
interest?
are going to do at the president's request.
Does that present a conflict of interest for you?
No, because you'd have to look at the individual contract and say, first of all, I'm not the one, filing the contract. It's people at SpaceX or someone who will be putting for the contract. And I'd like to say, if you see any contract where where it was awarded to SpaceX and it wasn't by far the best value for money for the taxpayer, let me know, because every one of them was.
The president said the other.
The Starship is like blatantly behind schedule, like significantly behind what you bid, the bidding schedule for like the performance of where isn't it like 2 years behind at least? My God, my camera is exploding again. Why is the kid on his head during a press briefing? Because he's an inappropriate weirdo.
Day that you might look at treasuries. Could you explain that a little bit? What kind of fraud, and that question goes to both of you, what kind of fraud are you expecting to see or do you see right now in U.S. treasuries?
Yeah, I think you mean the Treasury Department as opposed to Treasury bills, or...
You also referenced treasuries on Air Force One the other night.
Go ahead.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, really, the first order of business
Musk
is to
said
make sure...
Starship would be on Mars by 2022. Can you give me a clip of that?
Sure, we're actually collecting. Sorry for this. I thought my son might enjoy this, but he's sticking his fingers in my ears and stuff.
It's the final struggle, chat. It's the final struggle. It's the final struggle. Like, that's all that's repeating in my head. This is the final struggle.
It's a bit hard to hear sometimes. Hey, stop that.
This is all I'm hearing as he talks.
全世界无产者联合起来！全世界无产者联合起来！新青年把我中华文化觉醒之火趁势烧起来！
我们穿的衣，我们住的房，哪样不是劳动者所创造的呢？同学们，历史的重要时刻就要到。
无论是谁，要是敢亡我国家、灭我种族，我们就跟他们决战到底！
起来，结汗交迫的努力，起来，全世界受苦的人。
I'm doing this for my own mental health, not you.
满腔的热血已经沸腾，要为
根据民主原则，我们将选举产生中国共产党中央局成员。
It's like 12 guys in a room, man. They did it.
旧世界，大河落花流水，奴隶们起来，起来！不要说我们一无所有，我们要做天下的主人。
武装斗争，
这是最后的斗争，团结起来！ 到明天，赢得那熊奈儿，就一定
March, they lost and they had to march all the way across China.
要实现。这是最后的斗争，团结起来！ 到明天，赢得那熊奈儿，就一定要实现。
The beginning of the video starts with proletariat of the world unite and all that we own. Isn't it all produced by us workers? Yes.
人阳人民政府，今天胜利了！
Favorite thing is they're dismantling.
从来就没
The thing about Musk and Trump is they're dismantling the only people that are even have a chance of containing China. You'll love to see it, honestly. Keep it up.
那么救世主也不靠神仙皇帝，要创造人类的幸福，全靠我们自己。我们要夺回劳动果实，让思想冲破牢笼，快把那炉火烧得通红，趁热打
我们的目的一定要达到，我们的目的一定能够达到。
团结起来，到明天，赢得那雄来儿，就一定要实现，这是最后的斗争。团结起来，到明天，赢得那雄来儿，就一定要实现。
Aguardes to the city of Beijing.
So agrees.
是创造了人类世界。
这是载入中华民族史册的一天。
就给我们什么够了？一切劳动者所有乾隆的太阳照。
实现中华民族的伟大复兴，就是中华民族近代最伟大的作为。
团结起来，到明天。
经过长期努力，中国特色社会主义进入了新时代。
实现，这是最后的斗争。团结起来，到明天，赢得那雄来儿，就一定要实现。赢得那雄来儿，就一定要实现。
伟大光荣正确的中国共产党万岁！伟大光荣英雄的中国人民万岁！
It's funny because you go back to the very beginning of the video. This was China before the Communist Party. And this is China 100 years later. That's all you can say.
So, no, the stuff we're doing.
To what extent do you credit capitalism for China's development? I would say exactly what China would say, which is development of China using markets and private enterprise is completely consistent with the understanding of how human beings have developed over the course of history. Feudalism gave way to capitalism. That was a progressive force. Using capitalism to build up those what they call the productive forces of society is the way that human beings have developed in the past. And it doesn't make sense to just be like, oh, well, it's not fair for you to use what we know works. You And the thing about China is they haven't allowed capitalists to completely dominate their society and control everything of politics. Like in America, we have the richest man in the world in the White House dictating to us what's going to happen. This is not how it works in China. You can literally see capitalists just destroying things thoughtlessly for their own gain. You think the fact that there was an electoral college vote and 30% of the population picked Trump, that means that this system is somehow better? China has a lot of billionaires. It's true, they do. And they've been, and they're constantly put in their place. The tech bros, Xi put them in their place. The real estate speculators, they've been put in their place. Consistently put in their place. Now, is there still corruption within China? Absolutely. Is China doing oppressive shit that I disagree with? Absolutely. Are they too repressive and too concerned about outside meddling? Yes. Would I like to see more progress in the social arena? Going from a kind of don't ask, don't tell tolerance of LGBTQ people to more openly embracing it. Yeah. But but like if you compare how queer people are treated in China with how queer people are treated in American, puppets in Africa, it's night and day. So, I think China is definitely not the most progressive place in the world yet. But when you see how the trajectory they're on and you compare it with the trajectory of places like the United States, it's not looking good for the United States.
With the Treasury Department is so basic that you can't believe it doesn't exist already. So
I like.
So for example, like I mentioned,
interest here in asking you as a Marxist theorist. I recently interviewed Prabhat Patnaik from India, and I asked him about China, and he said that China's economic success in terms of growth and also ensuring development at the bare minimum, even though there are problems of inequality and stuff, is obviously no one can deny. But to what extent China is going towards socialism remains an open question. And he was critical about a lot of things within reform and opening. And this is something to think about, because if you visit China...
It is true. It is true.
There is almost a large popular consensus that during the years of reform and opening, China has made great progress. Of course, there are people on the left who are critical of some of those things, but there is a general consensus that we developed during the reform and opening. As a Marxist theorist, or someone who looks at theories of the left, I'm very curious about what your thoughts are on China vis-a-vis.
I think the main thing that people are not understanding is that there's this like historical context that most of you don't have, which is that the Soviet Union pushed for a very specific type of command economy. And they said that, and they were in charge of a very powerful state, and they made a lot of progress with the command economy. I don't want people to think that they didn't. They absolutely did. The fastest growing country in the history of the world before China was the Soviet Union, as far as economically. The development that happened in the Soviet Union was, especially early on, was unprecedentedly fast. Okay? So there was a lot of people who believe strongly in the command economy is the only way to do socialism thing. And it was pushed by the most powerful, country in the world that represented socialism as the only way. And any other way was unacceptable. And so we have that kind of historical baggage when we're talking about, the Soviet Union eventually fell. But a lot of the thought that propped up the Soviet Union is still around on the left as like, oh, China is not really doing any kind of socialist stuff because they're not doing command economy. And I think that's anachronistic at this point. It's 2025. Like, we don't need to have the debates that we were having in 1975 anymore.
the whole socialist vision, the socialist utopia, socialist ideal, how much do you give China on that front?
Okay. China defines itself, at least the leadership does, as socialism with Chinese characteristics. They like that phrase. So let me pick up from that. I like that phrase too.
I do as well.
Why do I like it? Not for the reasons that they do. I like it because it situates China within the dominant tradition of socialism that emerged from the 19th century, which, in my own opinion, is not a particularly Marxist definition. Here's what I mean. If China is socialism with Chinese characteristics, then it is a particular case of socialism. That's what they're saying. It's a particular kind of socialism. So what's the socialism that is the general, of which this is one kind? You know, that's how I'm trained to think. Okay, well, now I'm going to be very blunt and just in the interest of time. So Scandinavia and Western Europe clearly are socialisms. It's where it was born, out of England and Europe, socialism in the 19th century. And what it has meant there has been what I would call capitalism, because I define that as the organization of production around the dichotomy between employer and employee, in the way that I would define feudalism as the organization of production around the lord and the serf, or slavery around the master and the slave. These are without those kinds of distinctions, but recent human history is particularly focused on master-slave, lord-serf, employer-employee, and their variations.
And by that you mean the relationship between them?
Yes.
The rent, profit,
all of that. So but basically organizing production in that way, that there's a small group of people who are masters and a vast array of people who are slaves, a small group who are lords, I'm a European example, and a mass of people who are serfs, who are not slaves, but serfs, and then a small group of people who are employers and a mass of people who are
I think I get where he's going with this. I think I understand where he's going with this, which is like in the Chinese model, you have the small group of people that are Communist Party members, and then you have the great citizenry on which they are organizing production. And I think that is a totally fair critique for why it isn't communism and why it hasn't completely deleted the class distinctions. He's right about that. He's absolutely right about that. And that's why I think that, and that's what they would say, by the way. That's what the Communist Party would say of China. They would be like, yeah, this is not socialism. This is not communism yet. This is transitioning. In order to get to socialism, in order to get to communism, you have to have enough productivity in your economy. You have to have enough development to achieve that state, right? Like, you can't have capitalism without capital. So, and you can't have socialism without development. That's what they would say. That they tried to do socialism without development, and they found that they couldn't provide for the basic needs of everybody. They didn't have the productive forces available to actually give people true freedom. That's what they would say. Now, you could disagree with that if you'd like, but that's their experience.
Employees, I gave you that statistic, U.S. Census Bureau, 3% of Americans are employers, 97% are not. Okay. For me, that's capitalism. That's the uniqueness of capitalism. And what is European or Scandinavian socialism? It's when the government is assigned collectively assigned by the capitalists and the workers, emerging out of struggles between them. The government is assigned with the function of moderating, ameliorating, softening capitalism.
That's the post-war European.
Yeah, particularly. But it starts even with Bismarck in Germany in the 19th century. That's another conversation. But it's the government coming in and providing health insurance, or passing a minimum wage, or making sure that there aren't dangerous chemicals in the food, or a whole host of regulations, laws, all of that. That's one kind. Let's call it social democracy or democratic. I don't care. Look, it has gotten a variety of names.
I do think that one of the things when we were talking about this is like more getting into theory now, which is when the Scandinavian countries, the kind of social democracies, the Nordic model was built, the people building it saw it as a ramp towards socialism. They weren't trying to say this is the final stage of government policy and we're done and we're not going to do anything. We've created the perfect system of social democracy. That's not what they said. They said, okay, we're doing this, and now we're going to start using certain techniques to transfer ownership from the capitalist class to the working class. They started building co-op models. They started building up the minor, what the hell is his name? Fuck, I'm mispronouncing it. Meidner plan. Meidner plan. That's what it's called. Why is my internet so slow? Why is fucking everything shit? Fuck. The internet is crap. I hate the internet. Oh my God. Christ. Okay, so this is what they did. They were trying to come up with a way of creating a gradual socialization. Sweden's post-war welfare state had been built around a model designed by LO economists Rudolf Meidner and Gösta Rehn. The model stressed Keynesian fiscal policy, centralized collective bargaining between unions and employers, low inflation, and a push for wage equalization through a solidarity in wages policy. First, equal work should be equally paid, regardless of the profitability of the firm, the size or location of the workplace. What matters is the kind and nature of work and the skills which are needed to perform it. The second aim of the policy is equalizing of wage differentials, but not their total elimination. Different wages to be paid for different kinds of work. And then, so what they wanted to do is create a, let's see here. Let me see if I can talk about the plan they created. They wanted to socialize the economy gradually. Okay, if fully implemented, a number of wage earner funds would have been set up, financed through profit-related payments from firms in the form of voting shares, administered through union-dominated boards. In this way, as firms produce profits for their shareholders, the wage earner funds would gain larger and larger stakes in the company until they became majority owners. Excess profits would no longer benefit only the rich and powerful, and the benefits of holding capital will be shared across society. The funds will be controlled by workers within entire branches of industry, thereby ensuring that they would not provide an unequal benefit to workers in the most profitable companies and not contribute to increased differences in wages between workers. Unlike other profit-sharing schemes bound to specific companies, as have periodically been seen in the U.S. and other countries in the past. It was estimated by the Meidner Group that wage earner funds would have majority control over the stock market within a few decades. That was the plan. They were literally going to have companies be slowly bought up by their workers until workers controlled every major company. The reason why it failed is very interesting. They didn't actually get to do it. The employers strike back. So the capitalists, recognizing that they were creating a transitionary thing that may actually challenge their position within society, they were able to narrowly win an election to stop it. And that was the last true attempt to use a kind of like